Welcome to Ancient Secrets and Haunted Journeys. My name is Jessica, and I am a passionate seeker of history's hidden chapters, mysteries that linger in the shadows, and the inexplicable phenomena of the paranormal world. My fascination with the past, the enigmatic, and the otherworldly has led me on countless journeys through time and space, uncovering secrets long whispered in the corridors of the forgotten and the abandoned. In this captivating season, we take a departure from our usual expeditions across various haunted locales. Instead, we anchor our curiosity at one extraordinary site, the RMS Queen Mary. This legendary ocean liner, a behemoth of history and mystery, will be our sole focus, our solitary journey through the annals of time and the spectral realms. From the elegance of the Lady in White to the playful echoes of Little Jackie, from the heart-wrenching tales of wartime sacrifice to the eerie stillness of her abandoned decks. Every episode will unveil a chapter of the Queen Mary's storied past, intertwined with encounters that challenge the boundaries of our understanding. So, I invite you, my fellow aficionados of the arcane, to join me on this singular expedition aboard the RMS Queen Mary. History, mystery, and the paranormal converge in a tapestry of tales as deep and fathomless as the ocean herself. This is Ancient Secrets and Haunted Journeys. Let the voyage into the unknown commence. Welcome back to Ancient Secrets and Haunted Journeys. Today, we delve into a darker, more tragic chapter in the history of the RMS Queen Mary. Our focus turns to a fateful day in 1942, when the grandeur of the Great Ghost was overshadowed by a devastating tragedy: her collision with HMS Curacoa. This incident, a stark reminder of the perils of wartime, left an indelible mark on the ship's history, a scar carried through the decades. In the wake of this disaster, we turn our gaze to the Queen Mary's isolation ward. This once sanctuary for the sick and dying now echoes with a different kind of presence. Whispers of the past, unexplained shadows, and a chilling air of unease suggest that not all who entered this ward departed in the usual manner. Tonight, we explore the stories and spirits that linger in these confined quarters, a space where pain, hope, and fear intersected. Join us as we tread softly through the hollowed corridors of the Queen Mary's isolation ward, uncovering the tales of those who may still roam its halls, unwilling or unable to leave the site of their earthly struggles. The morning of October 2nd, 1942, dawned with no forewarning of the tragedy that would soon befall the RMS Queen Mary. Cutting through the Atlantic, she was a beacon of hope, ferrying thousands of American troops to the European front. But amidst the war's chaos, the unforeseen loomed, a catastrophic collision that would mar the Queen Mary's wartime service with a dark and somber note. As the Queen Mary, escorted by the British cruiser HMS Curacoa, a grave misjudgment unfolded. The liner's massive hull struck the Curacoa amidships, cleaving her in two with a horrifying inevitability. The Curacoa sank within minutes, taking 338 of her crew with her to the ocean's depths. The sea, once a canvas of natural beauty, became a tableau of human sorrow, strewn with the detritus of war and the remnants of lives cut tragically short. On board the Queen Mary, the impact sent shockwaves through the steel framework, jolting soldiers and crew alike. The enormity of the disaster was palpable, yet orders were clear: no stop for survivors. The Queen Mary, a vital cog in the war machine, could not pause, for the risk of U-boat attacks loomed large. It was a brutal calculus of war. The ship must press on, though her bow now bore the weight of a grievous wound. The soldiers aboard, already bound for the uncertainties of war, were confronted with an immediate and visceral manifestation of its perils. The collision was not just metal against metal. It was the shattering of the illusion of invulnerability that great ships like the Queen Mary often projected. Amidst the chaos, the crew's discipline held firm, a testament to their training and resolve, even as they navigated the complex web of emotions that the incident evoked. In the aftermath, the Queen Mary carried not only her human cargo, but also the heavy burden of what had transpired. The sea had claimed her fellow escort, and with it, hundreds of lives. The tragedy of the HMS Curacoa would become a scar etched into the Queen Mary's heart, a stark reminder of the human cost of war, felt far beyond the confines of her hull. As the Queen Mary continued her voyage, the waters closed over the Curacoa, but the memories of that fateful day would linger, as endearing as the waves that witnessed the sorrowful event. The collision was a pivotal moment in the Queen Mary's storied career, a poignant intersection of her role as a symbol of grandeur and her service in the grim reality of war. In the wake of the devastating collision between the RMS Queen Mary and HMS Curacoa, the ocean was a scene of pandemonium. Sailors, bereft of their vessel, were adrift amidst the wreckage, their cries for help rising above the waves. Yet, the Queen Mary, though shuddering from the impact, did not halt her relentless advance. She sailed on, leaving behind a wake of tragedy, her directive clear and unforgiving: maintain course and speed at all costs. This command, while a standard wartime protocol to avoid further casualties or potential enemy attacks, painted a stark portrait of the grim realities of war. The Queen Mary's captain, faced with the harrowing decision, adhered to the stringent wartime rules of engagement. There was to be no deviation from the mission, no delay in the Queen Mary's crucial role as a troop transport. The lives of the few weighed against the lives of the many, a heart-rending sacrifice on the altar of the greater good. Below decks, the soldiers who had heard the collision's dread clamor were left to grapple with a tumult of emotions. For many, the incident was a chilling prelude to the horrors they would soon face on European battlefields. The knowledge that fellow servicemen had perished within sight of salvation, and that they were powerless to assist, was a heavy burden that would haunt them throughout the war and beyond. The Queen Mary's crew was similarly affected, their maritime brotherhood deeply shaken by the incident. They worked on, their faces set in grim determination, while the ship's medical personnel tended to the few survivors who had been pulled from the sea. The juxtaposition of the living and the dead, the saved and the forsaken, echoed the tragic duality of war itself. In the days that followed, the Queen Mary's voyage continued, her course unaltered, but the atmosphere aboard was irrevocably changed. The joyous camaraderie that had previously marked the journey was now subdued, the shadow of the Curacoa's fate a constant, unspoken presence among them. The collision, a dire consequence of wartime exigencies and navigational miscalculations, left an indelible mark on the Queen Mary's storied legacy. It raised questions about the nature of duty and obedience, about the moral complexities inherent in the command structures of war. The Queen Mary had been an emblem of strength and safety, but the events of that October day revealed the vulnerability of even the mightiest among us to the ravages of war. As the Queen Mary docked, the soldiers disembarked, carrying with them the invisible scars of the ordeal. The sea, ever a silent witness to mankind's tribulations, held the secrets of those lost souls, while the Queen Mary, her hull breached but not broken, prepared to sail again, her role in the war far from over. The RMS Queen Mary, having survived the war's end, returned to her peacetime glory, but the scars of the catastrophic collision with HMS Curacoa remained, etched into her very essence. This tragedy at sea became a somber chapter in her illustrious history, a stark reminder of the unpredictable and merciless nature of wartime operations. The Queen Mary's hull was repaired, her elegance restored, yet the memory of the fateful collision lingered. It served as a solemn testament to the 338 souls lost from the Curacoa, whose lives were tragically truncated in the service of their country. The incident stood as a profound lesson in the brutal prioritization of war, orders that superseded the immediate human impulse to rescue and save. In the aftermath, inquiries and legal proceedings sought to untangle the circumstances that led to the disaster. The Queen Mary's adherence to wartime directives was scrutinized, debated, and ultimately led to changes in naval escort procedures. But for those who had witnessed the calamity, the outcomes of these deliberations did little to assuage the haunting memories of that day. For the crew members who continued their service aboard the Queen Mary, there was a palpable shift. The ship had been their home, their protector, yet she had also been the instrument of an immense loss of life. Their relationship with the liner was complex, a blend of reverence, affection, and an acute awareness of the vessel's newfound history. As the decades passed, the Queen Mary transformed from an active participant in world events to a static icon of maritime history. The collision with the Curacoa became a focal point for historians and naval enthusiasts, a subject of analysis and reflection. Yet, it was the personal stories of those affected by the tragedy that truly encapsulated the event's impact. A myriad of the individual narratives woven into the larger tapestry of war. The Queen Mary, now a floating hotel and museum, carries with her the echoes of the past. The collision with the Curacoa is a wound that has healed over time, but left a lasting mark not only on the ship's steel body, but also on the collective memory of a world shaped by the perils of war. It stands as a poignant reminder of the human cost of conflict, a narrative that continues to resonate through the silent corridors and empty cabins of the once grand ocean liner. Visitors to the Queen Mary today are often unaware of the depth of her wartime experiences. Yet, for those who delve into her past, the story of the Curacoa collision offers a powerful glimpse into the gravity of war and the resilience of the human spirit in the face of adversity. The isolation ward aboard the RMS Queen Mary is a space where history and haunting collide, enveloped in a silence that speaks volumes. It was here that the ill and the infirm were sequestered, a quarantine zone for those struck by disease or injury during the ship's service as both a luxury liner and a wartime troop ship. Now it's standing as a chilling tableau, a repository for the echoes of the past. Visitors who traverse the now still chambers of the isolation ward often report an unmistakable sense of being watched, a whisper of presence that lingers in the air like the remnants of a forgotten conversation. The ward, with its stark beds and medical paraphernalia, is a visceral reminder of the vulnerability of life amidst the luxury and the warfare that the Queen Mary has witnessed. Tales of shadowy figures and inexplicable sensations are rife among those who walk these halls. The atmosphere is heavy with the weight of the history, imbued with the essence of the countless souls who once occupied these beds in hope of recovery, or in the quiet resignation of impending death. The isolation ward, with its sterile surfaces and antiseptic smells, now carries the residue of human experience, of pain, of suffering, and of the desperate longing for home. It is said that the whispers of the ill can still be heard, a soft murmuring that defies the silence. These whispers carry the stories of the past, tales of endurance, of battles fought against invisible enemies within the body and the mind. The ward's air seemed to hold the very breath of those who once lay there, the collective sigh of relief, or the final exhalation of surrender. The names of those who passed away aboard the Queen Mary are inscribed upon a placard, a somber roll call that anchors the paranormal experiences in the stark reality of mortality. The list of the departed, with the causes of their demise etched alongside, served as a poignant reminder of the ship's history, a history steeped in the grandeur of travel and the grimness of war. In the isolation ward, the line between the material world and the ethereal seems to blur. The shadows that flit across the walls appear to be more than mere tricks of the light, hinting at a presence that remains tethered to this realm, perhaps held by unfinished business or the reluctance to leave the vessel they once called home. The Queen Mary's isolation ward, with its haunted whispers and lingering presences, offers a unique window into the past. It invites visitors to listen closely, to reach across the veil of time, and to touch the essence of the human stories that are interwoven with the fabric of this legendary ship. The sickbay aboard the RMS Queen Mary, once a refuge for the ailing, has morphed into a spectral realm where the past seems to refuse to rest. It is a place marked by the suffering of those who were once isolated within its confines, away from the lively throngs of passengers and crew, now a shadowy corner of the ship that harbors the apparitions of its somber history. Visitors to the Queen Mary sickbay often recount eerie occurrences. The sudden drop in temperature, the feeling of invisible eyes scrutinizing their every move, the soft rustling that suggests movement where no living soul treads. The specters that dwell here are not malevolent, but their presence is a poignant reminder of the ship's storied past, of lives spent in transit between worlds, both geographically and metaphysically. These apparitions, often described as fleeting shadows or faint outlines, seem to be echoes of those who once sought healing within these walls. They roam the sickbay as if in search of something or someone left behind. Perhaps they are tethered to this place by their final experiences of pain and longing, or maybe they are simply remnants of intense human emotion, imprinted on the fabric of this ship. The tales spun in the sickbay are not merely about the fear of the unknown, but also about empathy for those who once lay in these beds. The shadows are manifestations of the human condition, of illness, of the struggle for health, and the ultimate journey each person must take alone. The sickbay, with its legacy of care and comfort, now invites a deeper contemplation of the Queen Mary's role as both a sanctuary and a vessel of fate. The apparitions are silent storytellers, their narratives interwoven with the ship's voyages across the high seas. Their presence is a bridge to the bygone era, a conduit through which the living can connect with the trials and tribulations of a world at war. Paranormal investigators are drawn to the sickbay, their equipment sensitive to the subtlest signs of otherworldly activity. They seek to capture evidence of the shadows that linger, to give voice to the silent tales that the sickbay holds. Each recording, each photograph, each testimony adds to the complex tapestry of the Queen Mary's paranormal legend. The shadows of the sickbay are not bound by the constraints of time. They move through the hours with a fluidity that defies the linear nature of our existence. They are reminders that while the Queen Mary now sits docked, her history sails on, her legacy not confined to the tangible artifacts that populate her decks, but also alive in the intangible whispers and shadows that define her haunted mystique. The isolation ward on the RMS Queen Mary is a place frozen in time, a quarantine zone not just for the physical ailments of the past, but for the restless spirits that remain. It is here that sorrow seems to have settled into the very walls, where the energy of countless souls who passed through in times of distress still vibrates with a frequency that unsettles the present. Visitors to the ward often speak of an overwhelming sense of sadness, a palpable heaviness that envelops them as they navigate the narrow corridors. It's as if the collective grief and pain experienced in this space have lingered, a residual haunting born not of malice, but of unspent emotion and unfinished business. The tales told of the isolation ward are diverse, but they share a common thread, the sense that those who suffered and died within its confines are not at peace. Some say it is the memories that haunt these walls. Others believe the spirits themselves remain, perhaps unaware of their passing or unwilling to move on from the sight of their final lonely days. The concept of a quarantine is, by its very nature, one of isolation and separation. For the spirits of the Queen Mary's isolation ward, this separation seems to have transcended time. They exist in a state of eternal quarantine, but off from the finality of death or the solace of an afterlife. The visitors who come seeking encounters with the paranormal often find themselves touched by these stories, feeling a connection to the humanity that persists beyond death. The lore of little Jackie, the ghostly child said to inhabit the pool area, serves as a stark contrast to the atmosphere of the isolation ward, where Jackie's presence is often described with a sense of playful innocence. The spirits of the isolation ward seem to reflect the gravity of adult burdens, their weariness of illness, the pain of war, the longing of home. As the ships sit docked in the harbor, the Queen Mary's isolation ward remains a sanctuary for the stories of the past, a place where the veil between the living and the dead is thin. It challenges our understanding of the afterlife and prompts us to consider the possibility of a world that operates on different planes of reality. The lore of little Jackie, the ghostly child said to inhabit the pool area, serves as a stark contrast to the atmosphere of the isolation ward, where Jackie's presence is often described with a sense of playful innocence. The spirits of the isolation ward seem to reflect the gravity of adult burdens, the weariness of illness, the pain of war, the longing to go home. As the ship sits docked in the harbor, the Queen Mary's isolation ward remains a sanctuary for the stories of the past, a place where the veil between the living and the dead is thin. It challenges our understanding of the afterlife and prompts us to consider the possibility of a world that operates on different planes of reality. The restless quarantine of the Queen Mary's isolation ward is a poignant reminder of the ship's complex legacy, a vessel that has known both the heights of luxury and the depths of human suffering. For those who listen closely, the whispers of history are there, waiting to be heard, inviting us to remember and to reflect on the indelible human spirit. As we conclude our exploration of the Queen Mary's wartime perils and the haunting enigma of its isolation ward, the resonance of these stories continues to echo in the mind. The collision with the HMS Curacoa and the ward's eerie atmosphere remind us of the ship's multifaceted history, one steeped in both grandeur and tragedy. But our journey aboard this storied vessel is far from over. In our next installment of Ancient Secrets and Haunted Journeys, we will explore a different aspect of the Queen Mary's legacy, her record-breaking role during World War II, carrying the most passengers ever transported. Alongside this historical feat, we will delve into the disturbances and physical encounters experienced by guests in their rooms, a haunting reminder that some stories are not so easily left behind. What secrets do these rooms hold? What tales of unrest and unease linger within the walls of the Queen Mary? Join us next time as we continue to navigate the intersecting paths of history and the paranormal, unearthing more mysteries of this legendary ship.